Welcome to the Influential Leader podcast, and today with me I have Monica Rosenfeld. She's on a mission to facilitate human connection through incredible communication. She's one of Australia's leading education and speakers on this topic, and we're blessed to have her here today. She's worked in the media industry globally for over 25 years, both as a TV producer on a top ratings current affair program and as a founder in her award-winning PR agency, Wordstorm PR. Monica has helped thousands of people communicate to an audience of millions. She is the communication whisperer behind the global corporations, government sectors, fast-growing startups, and individuals who are creating positive change in the world. She is also the founder of Stories That Stir movement, which she created to break down barriers, stir conversation, and inspire positive change. The movement includes a collection of people globally who want to create a revolution of human connection in the world, and it currently includes storytelling events and podcasts. Another form of Monica's storytelling communication in the form of comedy. She has performed at Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide Comedy Festivals, Sydney Opera House, and the Comedy Store, and so much more. She thrives on unleashing true potential of leaders, business owners, and individuals through the power of incredible communication. Using her trust communication methodology, she helps people tap into their unique gifts and express these to the world in large, authentic, and powerful ways. So we are so grateful to have you here, Monica, because we need to know what's so great about in communication and what can we do to make sure we're communicating effectively?
Great question, Sarah, and thank you very much for having me on your amazing podcast.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I guess if we jump straight into it and into communication, all communication is pretty much a transference of energy between people. So you have the opportunity to make people feel fantastic with the way you communicate, or you also have the opportunity to make them feel like crap. And what I talk to my clients about is which one will you choose? And if you're going to choose fantastic, then that is wonderful. And there are many tools and tricks that you can use, to bring that across and adopt that in your day-to-day working and personal life.
I love that. And it's not even just as simple as fantastic or not fantastic. What is it that they need to feel to hear your story? So it might not be that they need to feel fantastic, but maybe they need to feel like they need to be considering what's the next step in their life, or what is it that they need to achieve in this communication that they're about to do to their team. So is the tool that you're talking about, effective, like, is it about thinking about what it is that you're trying to achieve first?
Yeah, well, basically, I follow the methodology that I've created called the trust methodology. And so instead of just sort of coming out and saying like how to communicate, it sort of follows these 5 steps. And the 5 steps are the T stands for transform self-talk to cure imposter syndrome. So basically it's starting with yourself, because you can't be a good communicator if you haven't done your own work first. So if you're feeling less than, or you've got self-sabotaging thoughts constantly whirring around in your brain, but you're trying to show up and communicate and pretend that you're not, feeling these ways, that's not going to work. It's just not going to be congruent, and it will come across as inauthentic. So the first step is that transform your own self-talk. So go inside yourself and do some awareness work on yourself, and think about and get awareness of what other thoughts you're telling yourself that might not be serving yourself. And sometimes it's very subconscious, but sometimes it's very conscious. Sometimes we know we have some sort of imposter syndrome, and we know we need to look at overcoming that so that we can be an effective leader.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's the first one. Then R stands for redefine your personal brand. And when I talk about personal branding, I take clients what I call my tree-step process. So it starts with the roots of the tree. So without those roots, that tree is not grounded in the earth, it's not nourished, and if it's not grounded and nourished, the minute a small bit of wind comes across, what's going to happen? the tree's going to fall over. Not that different to you in your emotional state. So I liken those roots of the trees to your top 5 core values. So I have a process where I get my clients to put on, firstly, their personal hat and come up with the top 5 core values. And I've got a whole process to get to that. And then their professional hat. And then we merge the two so that, because we're not two human beings, although we wear different hats, our values tend to be the same, whether we're focusing on our work life or our personal life.
And then I guess in communication aspect, that would help on authenticity and how you're communicating and who you're working with.
Exactly. So if you know your top 5, if you're very clear on your top 5 core values, then the way you behave, the way you communicate, the choices and decisions that you make will all tie into these core values. So it becomes actually quite easy to live your life and in the way that you are showing up as being authentic. So that's the roots part of it. Then we go to the trunk of the tree, and that's what I liken to the expertise that you want to be known for, or the thing that you're really passionate about at work. So you might work in an insurance company, but insurance might not be the thing that causes you bliss to go into a bliss state. But maybe you actually are so passionate about automating systems, and that's your genius, and that's what you thrive on. Then that's your expertise, that's your passion. So then we go up to the leaves of the tree, and the leaves is all about your physical appearance. So I work with clients to really look at how are they showing up from a physical point of view, and does that link to their core values? So if they come up with those 5 words, in the way they show up, because like it or not, as we all know, we make first impressions within the first sort of 15 seconds.
Yeah.
So if you're showing up in a way that's not congruent with your core values, that's the impression you're giving straight away, and it's the wrong impression because it's not true to you.
Yeah. And I feel that, a lot of the work we do across generations, that's showing up in that first 15 seconds, the message hasn't got quite across to them. And they in some cases they don't really mind. It's not the same as what it used to be. If you're in a business situation, the expectation was someone to show up in a suit or something like that. And I still do that because I know that means, that first 3 to 5 seconds counts, even though, that might not be, well, it probably is who I am, but it might not be the cause for the situation. But I feel that other people today don't realize that. There's so many business meetings that I rock up to now that people are in like shorts and a t-shirt. I'm like, I'm really overdressed.
Yeah. Exactly. And it is, look, it depends how seriously you want to take this personal branding stuff. But if you want to be really successful, you have to be congruent in the way you show up from a physical point of view. And maybe casual is your vibe, and then go hard on the casual.
Casual. I'm sure there's lots of people going hard casual.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, if they've consciously decided that is how they want to appear, and that's the perception that they want to put out there in a professional work environment, then as long as they own it to the nth degree, then
I think that's the key. I think owning it. I remember, more than one person I've been to events where they don't wear shoes on stage or something like that, and you just think, oh, they just have to own it.
Exactly. And they really are. And then we go to the branches of the tree, and that's all about communication. So it's all the different opportunities you have to communicate, whether it's in a meeting, whether it's a one-on-one conversation with your team, whether it's on your social media platforms, and all the different ways you can communicate. And
there's so many.
There's so many. So it's really taking sort of your personal brand and then looking at, all right, how are we going to communicate it in an authentic way? And then I take it all to the next step and create what I call the fingerprint effect. And I call it that because your fingerprint is completely unique to you, as is your personal brand. And it's with your fingerprint that you leave your mark on the world. And it's with your mark on a paper, if you hopefully not go to jail, but one day, you never know. And it's with your personal brand that you actually leave your mark as you move around the world in the way you do. So we get that fingerprint effect by taking those core values and linking them to your core behaviour. And if it is actually your top 5, you'll be behaving in a way that demonstrates those values every single day. Like, no doubt about it. Then we look at your expertise. Now, the sad thing about your expertise is that you likely share it with millions of other experts in your area around the world. But what nobody shares with you is your core story. And by sharing your core story, that is what's going to get people and attracted to you or on board with you in your world. That's the way to bring people into, you know, whether you want to influence them, inspire them to take some sort of action. It's with your storytelling that you're going to do it, not by reciting facts and being like a wooden robot. So I really work with people to get to their core story. Now, when we workshop, we talk about lots of details of your story, but we don't all want to hear about, you know, when you were 5, you dropped the ice cream and that caused you trauma and you can never eat ice cream again. Like, we don't need to know all the gory details, but that's what I help people nut out, the main things that they want to communicate.
And how they relate, I guess, to the end message, because, you know, that ice cream dropping might not necessarily relate to the message that you're trying to deliver.
Yes, or it might make a great story, you know, when I was 5, I dropped this ice cream, what it taught me, and then what it can teach you, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So, and
I think that I've been to lots of presentations, and I see a lot of people that don't do that well. Like, you hear about their past, but it feels disconnected to what they're trying to teach.
Yeah.
And I think people just think they take their origin story and that's all they need to do.
But
from, you know, what you're saying, it's a bit more than just an origin story. It's a little bit more about connecting it to the values that you're bringing to the message that you're delivering. Would that
exactly? Yeah, totally. I mean, it's about telling your story, and then it's the what's in it for you. So how can you apply this to your life? I mean, while people are listening to your story, they're going to put themselves in your movie anyway. So it's that happens. But then if you can then point out, you know, the key message that you're trying to communicate, it's going to be remembered and absorbed 22, apparently, according to a study by Harvard Business School, 22% times more than if you just talk facts.
Yeah.
We
as humans do carry on stories. I mean, that's how we remember things.
Exactly. Well, as I say, you know, storytelling is the language of human beings. That's why we read stories to our children before they can even talk. You know, it's just the way we communicate. It is our form of language, no matter what language you speak. And then lastly, with the fingerprint effect, we look at the physical appearance, and we can take that one step further and look at what you can make consistent so that you're remembered by that. So whether it's consciously remembered by it or unconsciously, that people say, oh yeah, like she's the one with the fire engine red hair.
Oh, I thought that's where it was.
Yeah, so it's like I want to book her to speak at this conference. I remember that red hair, you know, like it's just, I have literally had people come up to me like 5 months after meeting them quickly after an event and just saying, oh, of course I remember you, you've got that red hair, you know, like, so it's really, but it has to be, again, congruent to you. Yes. Like, I couldn't show up with a mohawk and blue hair, just wouldn't be me. And you might not want to, you know, so it's really looking at what you already sort of embody and what you, your values again.
Yeah. So it might be accentuating something, or it might be the same color that you wear all the time, or
exactly.
Branding, I guess that's what big businesses do, isn't it? They have the same color. Their cars are the, you know, one color. Their shirts, their employees wear one color, or something like that. They take
exactly. So that's the redefine your personal brand part of communicating. Then the U stands for understand the key to leading with integrity. And I guess what comes in under there is really just, it's about listening, active listening at the end of the day. So it's actually a bit of a false thing about you communicating, because so much of communication is more about you listening with what I call a curiosity mindset. And a curiosity mindset is basically where you have no preconceived ideas. And I actually get clients before a conversation to get a piece of paper and write all the things that they think the other person could or might respond with.
Yeah, I like that practice.
And then get that piece of paper and rip it up into shreds, throw it in the fire or the recycling bin, and come to that conversation completely blank and completely present. And then with a curiosity mindset. So it's about asking the questions and really making it a two-way conversation instead of just a blah, blah, blah from you. And then that's the...
It's about listening to understand versus listening to answer.
Exactly. So that makes up some of that part of, understanding the key to leading with integrity. Then the S stands for spark interest with stories that stir, which we've covered a little bit, but it's storytelling is where it's at. It's everything. It's if you can learn how to communicate a good and effective and conscious story that you're aware of, then your communication skills will go through the roof. And the fact
sorry. Yeah, good. And so I can really see how this works when you're a business owner and you're trying to get your business out there and build this brand around you and your business. And that, I think that's key as well. You do have to build the brand around you. It's not just your business anymore. I think the person behind the business is really important. Those nameless people behind businesses especially for small business, isn't what people are attracted to these days. They're more invested in the person behind it. But then that also works if you're in a corporate job or you're applying for a job. So when you talk about this communication and coming up with the brand story, how does that get used for someone that might be like applying for a new role? Is it an interview, is it in their resume, is it on their socials? Like, where do you feel that this is important?
Well, I think storytelling can be used everywhere, and you don't often see it in a CV. But can you imagine if you're applying for a role and the employer gets all these CVs that look the same and boring cover letter, boring blah blah, this is what I do. Imagine in that cover letter you wrote a little story about that relates to the job that you're going for and why you're so passionate about getting that job. I mean, that will just blow everyone else out of the water. And then when you go into the interview, instead of answering questions the way you think they should be answered and just thinking about what they want to hear, imagine you thought of a couple of key stories that linked to showing why you should get the job, why you're passionate about it, why you're going to make a difference. So instead of saying, oh, because I'm so organized and, I'm a great team player. I mean, how boring. Who's not going to say that? Like, seriously, you're not going to show up in an interview and say, look, I'm a shit communicator. I hate working in teams. Like, actually don't even want to go to work, but, I need the money. Like, you're not going to do that. So everyone says the same things. So imagine you go in with a story, a nicely packaged, tight story that hones in on all the points that you want to get across. And by the way, everyone has a story. It just takes, for some their story is like a gift from manna from heaven, like they've got an amazing obvious story. For others, we need to dig a little bit more, but everyone's got one or two or many. So yes, I think particularly for people who are looking for new jobs, looking to get promoted, storytelling is amazing.
Another important role. Yeah, I love it. And then is that S and then T?
T, the last T of the methodology is turbocharge your reputation for exceptional customer experience. And that is all about how you communicate with your customers. And it's really about putting your customers first at the end of the day and listening to them and making them feel valued. So transforming your communication from transactional to sort of transformative and making them feel the trust, the love, and all of those
community around them. Which, in my experience, it really does start with your staff and your team, how you want to treat your customers and speak to them and have them join you.
Yeah.
And you actually need to start with your team and the people that are
Yeah.
in your business. I think they're your first customer.
Exactly. And that's where it's really important to come up with the values within your business. I was so pleased that, I ran my PR agency for 22 years, so a long time. And a friend actually used my agency for his business. And I was on holidays. And I had a system whereby the account manager was very much in charge of their clients, and I was also very much involved with the relationship with the client. But anyway, I was away and my friend was dealing directly with the team, and when I came back, he just said they were so amazing. Like, one of our values was to show the love, like just show that they're just not a small fish in a big river, but they're a huge, massive shark in a tiny pond. Well, not a shark. Hopefully they're not. We had a few sharks, but a dolphin. Let's call it a dolphin. In a little lovely area, enclave. Not, we'll let the dolphin out to the wild after we have the conversation. But it's that was how we. That was the part of our values, and so I was so pleased to get feedback that's how clients felt, that they were being spoken to.
And I guess recognizing that value means that changes their behavior, behind the scenes, which is obviously what happened when you weren't. And
then you sort of know, the value that you want in your business. And if someone, after working with them and communicating and listening to them and guiding them, doesn't or isn't able to match that value that you want your business, well, then they're on the wrong bus. And there's another amazing bus there's another perfect bus for them where they'll be far happier. And
and look, realistically, if they don't align to that value, they're not going to be happy at the end of the day anyway.
You're doing everyone a favor.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think it's about determining those values. So I think you were saying there's a process to do that. And I know, like in Influential Leaders, we do it because understanding your values helps you be congruent with what you're doing, which is pretty much what you're saying you're doing for your clients. And I think it really is underlying a foundation of emotional intelligence. Growing, understanding who you are, how you're communicating, which is, part of what you're doing. And then, adjusting that so that the people that you're talking to and trying to inspire and impact are going to be able to hear you. Because if you think about yourself and communicate in that way, then the message isn't going to get across. You actually have to think about the person you're communicating to, which I assume that's where that PR comes into. People are happy to go out there and tell the story as they see it, whereas realistically, you need to think about the audience and tell the story as they need to hear it.
Exactly. And it's not just the audience, but if you want to get into the media, it's a certain type of story you need to tell to get their attention. So there are a few ways of doing that. And
is that because there's just probably so many similar stories, so you really need to kind of have that differentiation?
It's more about what's going. All the journalists want to. All journalists are focused on is getting engagement from their audience, and they know they're going to get engagement from a certain type of story, and that story is usually one where you can show some sort of vulnerability, and that is the key to storytelling. If you can show some vulnerability within your story, you will get people emotionally attached to what you're saying. When you get them emotionally attached, the head, all that analytical, limiting stuff, goes out the window, and you go straight to the heart space. And if we can hear a story from the heart space, that's when we are on the same. We can get into the world of the person, and magic can happen.
Yeah, isn't that amazing that that's the way people learn? Even when you're teaching, it's about that emotional side rather than just those facts and figures, because that's just about memory at the end of the day.
And no one, very rarely will you be. So that's why when you look at the headlines on news.com.au or SMH or any online media site or any media anywhere, it's always a headline that's going to. It's usually, particularly with an entrepreneurial business story or something like that, it's always showing the challenge. So when I actually still do training in PR training and key messaging training and things like that. And I always, I say, look, I know you love your business and I know it's going gangbusters, but what has been your biggest challenge? What's the mistake that you've learned from and overcome? What inspired you? Like, what is that essence that really inspired you? And then that we create a headline that just hits the journo straight in the heart space. And just
I love that. Do you have a story? Like, I'd love to know, is there someone that's been successful and then you've had to go to them and go, no, we need that vulnerability right now?
Oh, I've
done that, and it's just changed the face of
I've got a great one.
Yeah.
So one of our great clients was Costume Box. So you may know of them, but essentially they changed the game for costumes. Like when you had a dress-up party, you used to go rent. With Costume Box, they were the market leader in people actually purchasing costumes instead of just renting. So, and these two wonderful ladies started it, Nikki and Roma, and the business just going absolute gangbusters, and they're turning over 20 million a year and just flourishing and thriving. And I knew there was such a good business story in there that mass media would want to write about, but I knew if I just went to the media and said, oh, they're incredible and they're going from strength to strength and they're millionaires, and the media would be like, okay, but tell me what's interesting. Like, give me the guts, give me the grit, give me the challenge. So I spoke to them and I really tried to draw out the challenges, and their business has basically been a dream, well, until COVID, and now they're a dream again. But it really hadn't faced a lot of challenges. I mean, there was one little challenge with Google and stuff, but you didn't want to mention that. And so I really sort of had to dig, pardon the pun, because I said, what were you doing before this and before that and before that? And as it transpired, she had always wanted to be an archaeologist, hence the pun. And she did a 5-year degree to be an archaeologist. And then on her very first dig, she ended up hurting her back. And so she couldn't do that particular project. And then shortly after, she ended up getting pregnant. And then being in the obstetrician's office and chatting to the lady opposite her who became her business partner. So that was the story that we pitched to the media. And the headline was something like how this former archaeologist dug her way to a $20 million online retail empire. So, and that, that story went everywhere. So that's just an example of getting a little bit, getting aware of that story, of the vulnerability, and then creating a killer headline.
And I love that. So, but then where from there? So the reason why that business would have done that story is obviously it's almost like free promotion in the sense that you're getting out in the media and people are talking about you. But then is that it? Or do you have to keep coming up with stories? Like, how do you then stay in the media? Or is that not, is it only a once-off thing? Like, what do you suggest?
Yeah. Oh, that's a whole other interview. But there's lots of different angles you can come up with. And I've actually got a 7-reason framework to pitch to a journo, and each reasons is an acronym and each letter is a newsworthy hook. So
okay. So you can stay in the media, throughout
the I mean, we had clients that were working on for 5+ years who were getting consistent media. So it's not your business story is just one of the angles, and there's lots of different types of business stories you can be getting in the media. But then there's lots of other angles that you can use as well.
I love it. And I don't think, especially in small business and entrepreneurs, they don't often think about going down that path. I think they think it's for, those sad stories or those other stories that they didn't, because they don't realize they have a story, I guess.
No,
it's not even part of their marketing plan as PR.
I can't tell you how many clients I've worked with who have said, like, who would be interested in my story? I'm like, hello. Maybe you're not, but it's what you're doing is pretty interesting, and we can really make it more interesting in the way we package it to media. And people think it's too hard, but then I'm like, okay, so let's say 99.9% of your competition are on the socials, but less than 5% are taking the mainstream media headlines.
Yeah.
Is it worth a little bit of effort to get that extra bit of credibility? And so there's that. And then there's also the false understanding that you need to pay for an ad to get an article, which is not true. In the 22 years I've worked with clients, probably about 3% had a budget for some advertising. The rest had a zero, nada budget. We didn't need it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And do you think the other thing that might stop people is that, that vulnerability, they're worried about getting out there and,
yes, they don't want to.
Imposter syndrome.
Well, one, imposter syndrome. 2, they don't want to look like they're showing off.
Yeah.
3, they there might be strategic reasons, that they tell themselves. But what I always say is, take it away from you. So instead of thinking, oh, here I am sharing my story and I think I'm big for my boots and I've got imposter syndrome and people are going to think I'm showing off and all those things, focus more on the value you're going to give. So it's exactly like, as a speaker, if I stood there on stage and I was thinking it's all about me, it's going to be a terrible presentation. So what I'm focusing on is, what is the value I'm giving to the audience? Take the attention off yourself and just focus on what value do you want to share with the audience. And guess what? At the same time, yes, you're getting amazing publicity and all those things, but just have that focus on the audience.
On them. Yeah. I love that when I'm on stage and I'm running panels, I take the focus off me, because otherwise I might be nervous, and think about how do I want the person in the panel to communicate their message to the audience, and how can I help them to do that? Yeah. And it just makes it so much easier, and it just flows when you think that way rather than thinking about what am I going to ask them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's so much to learn from you, Monica. So if someone wants to reach out to you, how can they do that?
Well, send me an email. So my email is Monica, MONICA, at monicarosenfeld.com. You can also check out my website, which is exactly the same, www.monicarosenfeld.com. And get in touch. I'd love to hear your communication challenges, what you're looking to improve on, whether it's for yourself, your team, your business. I have a whole range of different programs and packages that I have depending on what people are looking for. And I absolutely thrive on the work that I do.
That's awesome.
I also wouldn't mind.
With you.
Can I talk a little bit about Stories That Stir?
Yeah, that'd be great. Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, great. So last year I created a storytelling event called Stories That Stir. And as you said in the intro, I created it to break down barriers, stir conversation, and inspire positive change. So essentially at every event, which was run every second month in Sydney, I would have 6 ordinary but extraordinary humans sharing their raw and personal story linked to a theme. Wow. So the themes we had last year were love, hope, choices, courage, transformation. And the idea is that the speaker pretty much gets on stage, takes off their masks and shares truth. And in doing that, the evening is fueled by human connection, and people feel inspired, they feel they've learned something, they feel better about themselves, they feel more empathetic about other people and what they're going through, and all the good things. So those events are all recorded live for the Stories That Stir podcast. So if you're interested in hearing really some very interesting stories from people from all walks of life, you can find the podcast on all podcast apps that you enjoy, including Apple, Spotify, and the rest. But yes, I'm taking Stories That Stir to the next level this year. So I'm creating what I call the Stories That Stir movement. And I will literally be focusing a lot of my attention on creating a revolution of human connection.
Wow.
And I don't want to do this on my own. It's not about me. I'm actually looking at building a community and a tribalship of people who want to join the mission. So I'm creating a tribalship instead of a membership where people can join for $12 a year. So $1 a month. To join the revolution of human connection. And I'm going to be using that tribalship funding to essentially make stories that stir as big, if not bigger than TEDx, and create as much, if not more, impact globally.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we want to support you and wish you well on that, because that sounds like a great initiative to get out there. And I think it's more needed now. People recognise that now, especially after COVID. And look, we could talk about that even further, because I think about what about the kids that have just gone through COVID? How are they going to connect in their life when they've had such a hard time and not needed to do that in some ways through the last couple of years? So it'd be interesting to see how that all plays out in the future, and something like this can really help, probably.
Definitely. Yeah, and that's just one arm of Stories That Stir, but that's one that I'm extremely excited about.
Exciting.
But I've also got a business model where I'm working with not-for-profits, with businesses, with First Nation Australian stories as well.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. Oh, I can't wait to hear all of them, because they sound like they would be really amazing to listen to. I want to say thank you for joining us today. And if you enjoyed today, I'd love to hear in the comments, how are you communicating? What did you take from today, and how are you going to implement it? And then what would you like to hear next? So please subscribe to the Influential Leader podcast and let us know what else you want to hear. See you in the next session.
Great. And thank you so much, Sarah. This has been a lot of fun.
It's been a lot of fun. I love talking to you. Thank you.